Take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy?
God damn it! My life has value! It's time to ask yourself what you believe. Mass murder, torture, perjury, embezzlement, fraud, deception, treason. These are just a few of your many crimes against humanity. You will not win this war, for you are fighting the very essence of humanity.
Welcome to Truth or Talk. I'm April Bowden.
And I'm Virstyne Henry.
And today's show, we're excited because we're going to be interviewing Gwen Olson in the second segment. And we wanted to bring in our correspondent, Sara Sotomayor, because she's such an expert on the pharmaceutical industry. And if you don't know who Gwen Olson is, she was a pharmaceutical rep. She wrote Confessions of an RX Drug Pusher. And so we're interested to be talking to her, and we know that Sara has a lot of knowledge on the subject, so we wanted to bring her in and bend her ear on it. So hi, Sara. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Good.
Great.
Yeah, it's good to have you back on the show. We're always so excited when we can bring you in. And so tell us again, the first time we had you on, you came on and you talked about your experience after the Gardasil vaccine and your medical nightmare. And at that time you didn't have a blog yet, but you do now. So what's your blog? Tell us.
My blog is www.sarashealingjourney.wordpress.com.
And how's the blog going? Have you gotten a chance to do much writing?
Yeah, I'm actually tomorrow, because today is Sunday, we're here, and I'm writing this article that about vaccines because my mom wrote an article during Vaccine Awareness Month. And then this doctor from where I live wrote a article on Vaccine Benefit Awareness Month. And so, I know, what a dick. And, so I just basically, I'm taking down every point that he made that vaccines are just so amazing, and anybody who doesn't take a vaccine is just horrible, and it's horrible if a baby who comes into this world isn't vaccinated. And he's a doctor, and it's just, it's just pure propaganda. He's just parroting the BS he learned in his 8 years of medical school. So I'm just,
gross. I know, and Sara, yeah, this guy who 8 years of medical school, he's probably like, in his 40s or 50s, and then here's Sara is 19 years old. She's just going to take him down.
Yeah, I'll make him cry.
Yeah, just make him cry.
I'm trying so hard not to swear in this because it's so obvious, and it's just, the lies are just, horrible. Like, the polio's cured everybody, and there's no polio outbreak in the world when, recently in 2012 there were over 47,000 children who were paralyzed from the oral polio vaccine. It's just ridiculous. So, he's really going to get a beat down, and I'm just really planning on hurting his ego, basically.
Good. He deserves it.
You know what, too? For doctors, too, I'm sure, they sacrifice a lot of their lives and their time. So it's like to tell them that the information that they've learned is wrong just must be I don't know what the word is, but ego shattering,
Right.
Yeah. He should consider asking for a refund, really, because
yeah.
Clarification, because really, he doesn't even know. He doesn't even know.
Yeah,
no idea.
Yeah.
And not only, ego shattering, but like you said, he should get a refund because they spend, I think it's in the millions now for a medical education nowadays. Dr. Suzanne Humphreys, who's done a lot of research on vaccines, she said that when she got her medical degree in the 70s, she was spending in the ballpark of, I think, $300,000, something, or close to $500,000 by the time it was all said and done. And that was in the 1970s. So you can imagine what it is. Yeah, and so, they spend so much money and so much time, and they don't really learn about vaccines or pharmaceuticals, really.
Nutrition.
No.
Well, they don't learn anything about nutrition.
Yeah.
I mean, but they're prescribing vaccines and pharmaceuticals without really even knowing what they are or what they do.
Yeah.
They rely on but they rely on pharmaceutical reps to educate them. So
yeah. Someone like Gwen Olson, who we're going to have on, that she used to do that, and then she finally had to stop because it was so horrible. But so, Sarah, so speaking of that, let's talk about your experience, because when we had you on, you told us about how you had a really adverse reaction to Gardasil, and then you kind of went through the pharmaceutical nightmare after that. So what were some of the drugs that they had you on, and how the side effects and such?
Well, they had me on prednisone, which is a steroid. They had me on methotrexate, which is chemo. It was first the pill form, and then it was in the shot form. Embro, which is another pen shot. Remicade, which is IV therapy for rheumatoid arthritis, which was absolute hell. They put me on morphine, which we didn't know it was morphine. It was called tramadol, and it's a derivative of morphine. And so the BS the doctor said was, well, you don't have the personality to become addicted.
Yeah.
And that should have been a red flag right there. But, I mean, when your kid is, screaming and crying in pain, what are you going to do? You want the pain to stop so they're not suffering anymore, so that's where we went. But it gave me, we didn't realize that it was withdrawals when I started having them, and we thought it was just the pain that was making me, like, shaky and nauseous and too hot and then too cold. But then my aunt actually researched it, and she said, well, the reason why is it's a derivative of morphine. She's going through withdrawals. So then I immediately started to wean off of it, and it was just as bad as a heroin addict. It was awful. So none of these drugs are safe. And at the time, when I did do the morphine, I was only 14 years old. I mean, I was,
oh my God.
And I'm a long, lanky person in general. So, I mean, I wasn't heavy or anything. So
right.
I'm taking about 4 pills of the tramadol. So, I mean, it took a good month and a half or so to wean myself completely off of it.
Yeah, that doctor, I mean, that's such an ignorant, stupid statement. It's like, what in his medical education actually gave him the conclusion that you didn't have the personality type? You know what I mean? Like, where did he learn that?
Exactly.
That's just such, I don't even believe that, I think that was just laziness on his part.
Right, and of course there's a lot of money in it. And it's a chemical reaction within the body. It doesn't matter what your personality is. It's awful. And a lot of people think that these drugs are clinically tested by a third party, by the FDA, and that they're getting an unbiased, report of it. When that's it's an absolute lie, because there's this PDUFA Act, which is Prescription Drug User Fee Act, and that was in 1992. And basically what happened is this allowed the pharmaceutical industry to start to be able to fund the FDA. So they're funding $350,000 to the FDA per new drug application. So this allows the FDA to fast-track the pharma drugs through the approval process. But the FDA isn't doing any clinical studies. They're just getting the studies that the pharmaceutical industry did on their own products.
Yeah.
So it's completely unbiased, and no drug is safe. They're toxic. They destroy the enzyme system. They impair liver function, which then leads down to another myriad of problems that can stem from it.
Right. Yeah, it's just crazy, and to think that, I mean, I don't know, how much of the mainstream media that you ever watch, but I mean, when you see these like commercials, I mean, it's got to be like 30 to 40% of what's on TV now. Their commercials are for the pharmaceutical industry. So when you tell people the news is biased, they're supported, they're financed by the pharmaceutical industry. People don't get that. They still think they're receiving the news. And I go, no. These people work for pharma. So we're hearing this. Have you guys been hearing about this, the new flu outbreak?
Yeah, it's so funny. Get your flu shots, and they don't even know what strain it is. There's no way for them to know.
Yeah, and I think they're even admitting that they're telling people to get it, and they're finding that it's not effective, because it's not, it never is. But they're finding that it's not effective, but they're still telling people to get it to protect from this major outbreak. So it's like, what logic do you have to tell people?
And there was the doctor on Fox or whatever, their call-in doctor, who's just, I can't even remember his name, but he's another idiot. And so there were these people who were on the show, and they were asking questions. The people were asking questions of the doctor. Well, isn't mercury poisonous? And do you even know what strain it is? And he was getting so mad because they were awake and they were asking really good questions, but they were just propagandizing it.
Yeah. So he was getting defensive because they were awake and they were
really defensive and angry about it.
Oh my God, that's so funny. Yeah, but it's so obvious that this campaign. I mean, I don't know how bad this flu is or not, and if people are getting sick or not. But it's certainly the best way to prevent flu is through healthy diet and living. So, do you guys have any preventative flu remedies or flu remedies?
I just drink a lot of green smoothies. I think that helps just keep my immune system pretty up and running. I'm drinking Kangen water right now. I do that a lot. That helps. I mean, because I noticed, because I have asthma, so my immune system is very, very weakened. But ever since I've started drinking Kangen water and doing green smoothies and stuff, I literally have only been sick maybe 2 times in about 2 years. And I think one of the times, I got a throat infection because I didn't clean my inhaler out thoroughly. I felt it as soon as I sprayed it, and I felt like my throat I felt like a sickness in my throat, and I felt it move down, into my chest area. But other than that, for me, I mean, that's all I do. And then if I get sick, if my throat does hurt, I do lemon and honey. I do use my neti pot every once in a while. If I feel like I'm starting to sniffle, I'll use a neti pot. That's amazing. Have you guys tried neti pot?
I haven't.
No.
I think people get freaked out about it, because they think when they use it, it's going to be like, if you ever gone swimming or something, water shoots up your nose. It hurts really, really bad. But the neti pot does do that. It just kind of rinses. It's like a little teapot, and you put maybe a little bit of salt, or some people use tea tree oil, little bit of tea tree oil, though. Yeah. If you use too much, it'll burn some other kinds of essential oils, maybe. And then you put that in with a little bit of warm water, and you just put it in. It looks kind of gross, but you run it up one side of your nose, and it comes out the other. And it cleans out, your sinuses.
Yeah, I do, we use coconut water because it gets rid of, parasites, antifungal, antibacterial, antiviral. We do the green drinks as well, and the honey, or ginger even, do a ginger tea.
Yeah. Oh, ginger, yeah.
Yeah, and we just eat really healthy and make sure we're boosting our immune systems and using probiotics, because then you're helping your intestinal flora, which is, your immune system, so it's able to fight if you do get something.
Oh, yeah, I drink kombucha, too.
Yeah, kombucha. Yeah. I love kombucha.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. That's a good way to get your probiotics, and it tastes kind of like soda. I get ginger flavor.
It does, yeah. Do you use the gingerberry?
I hate berries. Okay. Just the regular ginger, but I used to actually make kombucha. It was just kind of time consuming, so I stopped. But I think maybe eventually I might do it again. You can make it too.
Yeah, and you can make other kind of probiotic drinks like coconut kefir, or if you can tolerate milk, you can use you can even make your own yogurt and things like that. The over-the-counter yogurts don't have enough. They don't ferment them long enough for them to actually have enough bacteria. So generally, what they do is they add those bacteria in, or they basically put a probiotic vitamin in there, and because you have to ferment it for at least 24 hours, and then it sort of changes its chemical composition. So that is a good way. Just keep yourself, your probiotics in your body. And my mother-in-law has this remedy, and it's so funny because I've known this for a long time, because she taught this to me, but I've seen it like going around on Facebook and all over the internet, like all these people calling it the flu shot. But I've known about it for years because it's exactly the same thing that she used to do, and it's lemon, cayenne pepper, garlic, and honey. You put those things together, and honest to God, it's like you drink it, and it doesn't taste great because it's just such a,
Because it's lemon, cayenne pepper, and honey?
Well, I mean, I actually don't mind it that much, to be honest, but yeah, that's a weird... My son's sitting here going, yeah, neither do I. I kind of like it. But it's a spicy, bizarre combination. And you can put it in a little bit of water and make it into a tea, or you can just drink it, just straight up. And the minute you take it, you feel a little bit like you're going to puke. And then within minutes, you start to feel your body, it breaks up the mucus and things like that. And it's really good. And, you can use the other types of citrus as well. I think I've seen it also, people do it with oranges. But I prefer the less sweet, the lemons or the limes, I think work best. Mm-hmm. And so that's a good natural remedy, Just drink a lot of tea, a lot of hot water, and you'll be fine.
And drink a lot of water, too. Get exercise.
Yeah.
It's easy as it sounds, exercise, water.
Right.
Stay in a good mental state. Everybody can't be happy all the time, but, also if you're stressed out, if you worry about stuff, all the time, too, that weakens your immune system.
It does.
And happy, so.
Not getting enough sleep. All these things.
Yeah, exactly.
But in our society, we're taught to, we want the quick fix, and that's what the drugs are all about, and the pharmaceuticals, because all these things, they're simple, but you have to be consistent with it every single day. If you sort of, you can go off the rails once in a while, it might be all right, but if you but you have to have, most of the time, 90% of the time, live a healthy lifestyle. Otherwise, you're going to get sick, and you're going to get, and so people don't want that. They want to just go in and get antibiotics or get a flu shot or whatever they do. I don't even know what they get. What do they give for the flu when people actually get it? Because it's
nothing. They just tell you have the flu. I mean, maybe they might give you something for your symptoms, but there's nothing. There's no pill for the flu.
I thought there was. Like a flu drug that just came out. Something.
Robitussin.
Yeah. I don't know but it seems like there is. I wouldn't be surprised, like it's some sort of antiviral thing, because it's a virus, so it's just got to run its course. I don't know what or whatever.
I think sometimes stupid ones will give you antibiotics.
Yeah, but they don't kill viruses, they kill bacteria, right? So
yeah, but that's why they're stupid, because they don't know the difference.
And antibiotics wipe out your entire gut flora, which equates to 3 pounds of your body weight, and then it wipes your immune system's memory, so that it doesn't have the memory of what it fought prior to that.
So it can't fight.
And then we have no way of getting all those probiotics or the good bacteria back in our gut, because we have like over 400 strains of different good bacteria, and the reason we can't is because the soil's unhealthy. If the soil was healthy, we could.
That's interesting. I saw are you familiar with Dr. He's not a doctor. G. Edward Griffin? Researcher,
yeah.
And he did a film called I think it was Cancer Truth or something along those lines, and he was talking about that and how a lot of people, cancer can be cured with the vitamin B17, but it's actually illegal to give that, and one of the reasons that we don't have that in our food supply is because of the depletion of the soil. We don't have the soils aren't rich with it anymore.
Right.
So we don't have access to. So the soil's a key. So playing in the dirt, when we're kids and things like that, actually is helping us stay healthy. Yeah.
Should have played in the dirt more.
I did. I played in the dirt, but I lived in the city, so I got warts on my feet because I was no lie. I know, just a little disclosure, everybody, just to picture it, But yeah, that wasn't. Because when you live in the city, there's a lot of gross stuff going around, But I was barefoot like almost my entire childhood. I loved being barefoot. I hated having shoes on, and I loved rolling in the dirt and in the mud and all that.
I can do dirt. I can't do mud. I'm a little. I'm a little bit of a snob like that. I can do, but mud, I don't know. Depends on. I don't know. Depends on the situation. Anyway, we digress. But I want to say something about really fast. I was looking at this interview on Dr. Dr. Blaylock, right, the neurosurgeon?
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of the pandemic, he was talking about how there was this study done in the Netherlands about children who can get regular flu vaccines,
Mm-hmm.
and they're unable to produce this these cells that protect them against pandemic viruses and mutating viruses. So, I mean, if we do have a pandemic anyway, you know, they won't be able to fight it off because, or people that have been getting vaccinated, you know, since they were children, won't really be able to fight it off if they don't have a strong immune system, you know, because it's depleting these cells that's supposed to protect them against that, you know.
Right.
And it's just interesting. People think, oh, you know, they hear, oh, there's a flu pandemic and we need to run and get our vaccines. But, you know, by that time, it's game over. Like, if your immune system isn't up and running, and there's no way you'll be able to fight it off, you know?
Right.
Even if you do get even if you say there was a cure, you wouldn't be able to. It's pointless, so.
Right.
Exactly.
They're using fear to, like, you know.
Yeah, no, I've never had a flu vaccine myself, and I'm so glad because I remember when I think when I was pregnant both times, the doctors told me to, but they weren't really forceful about it. They didn't follow through with it, but I just went, nah, you know, I didn't say anything. I just ignored their recommendation and just didn't do it. But a lot of pregnant women are being forced to do it by their doctor. Their doctors are actually really making them do it in order to even be seen. You know, and I say if the doctor does that to you, fire them and get a new doctor. I don't care how far along you are in your pregnancy, just because it's not safe, it's not approved for pregnancy, and there are a lot of women, when they did the H1N1 the first year, before they made it a triple strand vaccine, a lot of women were having miscarriages. There was a high number of miscarriages and stillbirth babies. So it was quite, yeah, that was a side effect of the flu vaccine. So don't do it, women, please.
Your kid doesn't even have an immune system yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all that vaccine's just going to go right to the baby.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's not approved. If you look at the vaccine insert, it actually says that it's not approved for pregnant.
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. So that's yeah. It's just a big mess, and you know we try not to just jump straight into the whole conspiratorial thing, but it's so hard when you see that these things are just so deliberate. You just go, I don't know how to look at it any other way. I'm sorry, folks. It's just you know
what? Neurotoxins. There's all have neurotoxins in them. It's not really a conspiracy about it. It's just scientific fact. You know, you don't have to believe in that, you know, because it's been tested. They're mercury, lead, arsenic, they're all neurotoxins.
But it's a conspiracy because knowing this, people that are making these vaccines knowing this and still making them and giving them to people, it's a conspiracy because they're planning to, you know, it seems like either like Dr. Blaylock says, even they're incredibly stupid or they know exactly what they're doing. You know, either they're just sitting in a laboratory just mixing random things in a bucket and not, you know, and they're just dumb and stuff like that, and they're just, you know, putting it into vaccines and injecting people with it, or there has to be something methodical about it.
I think it's a combination. There are some people who are methodical about it, but those are in a smaller number than there are just real idiots that are totally incompetent, and those are the underlings who are just doing all the grunt work.
What's their trust? You know, they trust the people at the top. They trust them because they're authoritarian figures, and they trust what, you know, they're told because these people supposedly have no more knowledge than them, so they're not going to really question it.
Yep.
And they're just going to basically do what they're told. But I mean, like, even it's weird. Just even as a I don't know whoever makes the vaccines and stuff. Wouldn't they know that? It just seems like they would know the effect that like mercury would have on people. Maybe they're just being told that, oh, it's a small amount of mercury, it doesn't matter.
That's what it is. Yeah, because my aunt, she does that. She works for, she's a blood tech, like she draws people's blood and stuff like that. So she's seen them making it, and she goes, but it's just this much, and it's like this, she puts up her fingers, and it's like this tiny little pinch. It's just a pinch of mercury, so, you know, how could that affect you? And I'm like, well, because of the delivery system, for one, and it's not the same material that they've tested. The safety test that they're working on is the type of mercury that is found in fish. They're working on that type, not the type that they actually use. So they're not,
Yeah, well, I was listening to Dr. Blaylock, and he was saying even like a nanogram, which is like, I think, a billionth of a gram, can have a dramatic effect.
But the point is,
that's a microscopic, you know. Huh?
The point is that they've been using it for 70 some odd years, and they've never tested it for safety. They're using a different type of chemical composition, a different type of material. That's completely, they use ethyl mercury, and the type that they're going on is methyl mercury. So they're two different chemicals. You cannot, just because it's in the same category doesn't mean that it's the same thing. And any scientist would know that. This is the point that Dr. Boyd Haley has made. He's like, it's just lunacy. He goes, these people are, insane. The CDC, they're the ones that need to have to be psychiatrically tested because things that he said. The people working for the CDC, these geniuses, these Einsteins, are sitting there using a different. It's just bad science. You can't use one type of material in another.
But I have a question. You said they use ethyl mercury instead of methyl mercury?
Right.
Doesn't ethyl mercury have a higher toxicity? Isn't it like higher in toxicity than methyl anyway?
Yeah, well, it is, but they've never tested it because they've used the test studies done on methyl mercury to justify how much they put in, and they exceeded.
Oh, got you.
They don't even go by their own standards because they exceed the amount that they say is actually safe. But they're basing it on the safety testing of a different type of material. So it's just bad science. It's just there's no way around it. You can't do that and think that you're going to get an accurate result. So
gotcha. Okay.
And in 70 some odd years, 73 years or whatever, how long they've been using it, they've never tested it. They don't have the time. Lord knows they have the bloated, finance.
They don't have the time. They don't have the time. Yeah.
The time to do it, No, they just say no. They're doing. So sadly, but that's why we're here. We're going to tell you guys that because you're certainly not going to get that from your doctor. And so anyway, I think we're just about out of time here. We're going to cut to a short break, and when we get back, we're going to be talking to Gwen Olson. But before we go, we'd like to thank Sarah for coming in and doing this with us. Sarah, please tell us again where your blog is.
It's excuse me, I screwed that up. It's www.sarahshealingjourney.wordpress.com.
Excellent. So it sounds like she's got a really good article coming up, so please check that out and give her a donation. She's got a birthday coming up. You have a birthday coming up, right, Sarah?
Yeah, on February 2nd. I'll be 20.
I say Februuary 2nd, $20 for the $20-year-old donation budget. Everybody listening, please.
$20 per person. Yeah.
Yeah. So because she's doing a lot of work, and she's going to have a really great article up really soon. So that's exciting, and we want to thank you so much, Sarah.
Well, thank you guys.
Thank you.
It's always a pleasure, and she'll be back soon. So stay tuned because we're definitely going to bring Sarah back in a few episodes to come. So we are Truth or Talk. And you can find us at truthertease.com. Our store is shop.truthertease.com. We're going to take a short break, and when we get back, we'll be talking to Gwen Olson.
All right.
All right.
Researchers are now linking the flu shot to sleep problems for some children, a very rare disorder that will last those particular kids for the rest of their lives. This study's out of Great Britain. It claims that a version of the swine flu vaccine might cause narcolepsy in children. Might. Narcolepsy is an immune problem that causes the body to attack its own cells, leaving people tired and sometimes having weird hallucinations. Doctors gave out some 30 million doses of this shot back in 2009 and 2010. Now GlaxoSmithKline, which makes the vaccine, reports more than 800 cases of narcolepsy linked to the shot in Europe.
Health officials say children should be vaccinated or the country risks bringing back many rare diseases. But in California, a growing number of parents are saying no. Bill Whitaker met one of them.
Who knows what color we're missing?
Purple. Green.
3 years ago, Dottie Hagmeyer began making healthier food choices for her family.
she also made a crucial decision about vaccines.
I feel like there's no reason at all for me to continue to vaccinate my children.
That includes vaccinations for whooping cough or pertussis, a highly contagious bacterial disease of the respiratory system that causes uncontrollable coughing. An outbreak in 2010 sickened more than 9,000 people and killed 10 just in California, the worst since 1947. But Hagmeyer worries about the vaccine's potential side effects.
You think the risk of taking the vaccine is greater than the benefit?
I personally do, yes. Even if I get my kid vaccinated, they're still at risk to get a whooping cough.
Even though the CDC says the vaccine protects 7 out of 10 children from whooping cough, a growing number of parents in California, most of them affluent and educated, are signing waivers refusing to vaccinate their children, and that's alarming health officials. Dr. Deborah Lehman is a leading infectious disease specialist in Los Angeles.
Parents today are being asked to vaccinate their children against diseases that they haven't seen. They don't remember the summers of polio epidemics and certainly not whooping cough. So there's a sense that these diseases don't exist anymore.
A newly released study found that communities with large clusters of unvaccinated children were 2.5 times more likely to experience whooping cough outbreaks.
I think we're going to see more outbreaks. So when we slip below that protective sort of 95% of the community being vaccinated, we really risk outbreaks.
Hagmeyer says she's relying on a healthy diet rather than vaccines to boost her kids' immunity.
A 15-year veteran, pharmaceutical rep from 1985 to 2000, Gwen Olson worked for McNeil Pharmaceutical, Syntex Laboratory, Bristol Myers Squibb, Abbott Labs, and Forest Laboratories. She was a hospital rep and specialist rep for the majority of her career, educating residents in hospitals, teaching settings, and selling prescription drugs to doctors in obstetrics, gynecology, orthopedics, cardiology, neurology, endocrinology, and psychiatry. She is the author of the award-winning book, Confessions of an RX Drug Pusher, and contributing author to 3 books, Drugging Our Children by Sharna Altman and others, Doctor of the Future by Don Yachter, D.C., and the Maximized Living Makeover Manual by Ben Lerner and others. Gwen has also published health-related articles in the Wellbeing Journal, Natural News, and the Health News Digest. Gwen is a passionate mental health activist, writer, and dynamic speaker, and devotes much of her time to mental health and child advocacy. Gwen volunteered as a court-appointed special advocate for the Travis County court system from 1995 to 2000, serving as an advocate for abused and neglected foster children in Texas. A 2007 Human Rights Award recipient, she is sought after intentionally as a speaker and media resource and has testified numerous times before Congress and the FDA. Gwen has a unique history insider's perspective of the current U.S. healthcare dilemma and utilizes both her experience and insights she received in her extensive sales training with pharma to illuminate marketing trends and illustrate how current greed and conflicts of interest make the system itself the biggest health risk to American consumers. We'd like to welcome Gwen Olson to the show. Hi, Gwen. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, hi, Gwen. It's good to have you on. We've been watching our fans of your work and admired your work for a while, so it's good to have you on finally. So you worked as a pharmaceutical rep. How long did you do that?
For 15 years, from 1985 until the year 2000.
And was that a good, lucrative career, or did you make good money in that?
Well, yes. In fact, that was probably the reason why I stayed in for 15 years, because I tried to get out initially and found that I could not make the kind of money or have the benefit packages or all of the benefits such as a company car and things of that nature that I was enjoying with the pharmaceutical industry. So it actually kept me in on a part-time basis for an additional 7 years after I had wanted to get out initially. So, yeah, I could say that I was making very good money. I made 6 figures before I was 30 years old. I drove a company car that I had replaced every 3 years or every 60,000 miles, whichever came first. I had eye and dental and health coverage and prescription coverage. I had every kind of benefit that was imaginable, and I also lived a very nice lifestyle through the pharmaceutical industry. But all of those things were things that I learned as I proceeded in my career, that things that were being paid for by blood money, and I eventually had to get out because of a moral conscience issue.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, and what was your job? I mean, what do pharmaceutical reps actually do?
Well, the job is purported to be one of education, but what the job actually entails, it's a position of marketing and disseminating marketing information to physicians. It's also a profiling position where you profile physicians and their habits and their prescribing habits and their affiliations and any kind of personal information that you can get for the company that will help to influence that prescribing or that doctor's prescribing habits. And basically, the position was one of bribery for me to be able to find out what it was that it took for me to influence a doctor by buying him the appropriate things, by taking him the appropriate foods, by, giving him the goodies and the perks that would allow me to be the preferred rep to get into his office and my product line to be the preferred product line for him to write when he wrote prescriptions.
Wow. I know. I saw something very interesting. We were talking about how you were trained to basically psychoanalyze people, how they taught you that. So could you break that down for our audience?
Well,
psychoanalyze doctors, I'm sorry, when you were selling to them, yeah.
It's to profile physicians, to psychologically profile them so that you know how to approach that physician. Different personalities are approachable in different ways. So, for example, if you learn that a physician is an amiable person or they have an amiable psychological profile, that means that they want to get along with everybody and they want to be friends, and so they're more open to doing things that you ask them to do just to get along, just to be liked. Now, if you were to approach an analytical personality, that's a person that wants some scientific data. So that would be someone that you would approach with a clinical study or some sort of clinical data or a journal or something in order to have credibility and be able to influence that physician. Another example would be if you have a driver personality, which is the person who likes to be in the control position, then that's a person that you defer to, and you might ask that person for their advice and their take on things so that it appears that they're the ones that are running the conversation or influencing the situation versus you being the manipulator. However, the whole purpose of profiling the physician is in order to be the manipulator or the controller of the circumstance so that you get your outcome based on how you deal with that personality type.
And they teach you this. Wow. This is just, wow.
I had been in the industry for a while, but again, as you're in for a while, they continue to hone your selling skills and your ability to influence people. So it's really a lot more than just giving education to someone, because if you're just trying to teach someone something, the only thing that you really need to know is the information versus how to manipulate or control or influence a personality.
Yeah, wow. So I think a lot of people think doctors know about pharmaceuticals, but listening to your interviews and reading your book, I was really shocked to know that they really don't. So in comparison, how much do doctors know about pharmaceuticals? Are they even taught a little bit in medical school, or how much do they know?
Yeah, they're taught a little bit in medical school about various drug categories and various, usages of drugs, but after they're out of medical school. And then what you have to realize is when they're getting this education, too, it's always coming from the pharmaceutical industry. Even in the med schools, they're very often sponsored by the company if they aren't, in fact, given by the company these programs, or they're actually hiring out independents to do this education, but then, the curriculum is all handed to them by the pharmaceutical companies. So it's really a lack of fair, balanced information coming into the educational resources. That's what the problem that I see is, because it's all very, skewed towards the favor of the industry versus giving everyone the good, the bad, the ugly. When I started in the industry, I was trained by an older gentleman who, basically shot from the hip and said, hey, listen, don't ever say that a drug is safe. There's no such thing as a safe drug. All drugs are toxins, and everything that they do is a side effect. It's just whether or not that it's a beneficial side effect that's desired by the person taking the drug. So, I was trained initially that you had to be very cautious about what you told people and what you claimed to be accurate. And fortunately, because I got that sort of training initially, I kept that close at heart. And I would always say if I didn't know an answer to a question, I would tell a doctor, I don't know, but I'll look it up for you. But as I was in the industry for a while, I started noticing that fair, balanced information and not, making blanket statements that could possibly cause problems for patients in the future was going by the wayside, and it was becoming, how can I affect the bottom line of my portfolio? How can I best get this doctor to prescribe my drug? And it became a process of minimization, basically, where we were trained to minimize and sidestep the concerns that doctors had about our products rather than to confront the situation head-on, give them the good, the bad, the ugly information so that they could make informed decisions for their patients, and also so that their patients could be well educated and give informed consent. That is the crux of my whole mission and my whole issue, is that people are not giving informed consent for these treatments because they aren't given good information. And if you aren't given good information, you cannot give informed consent.
So I'm just curious then, why, how much time does the doctor have to look up information, or why wasn't it the doctor's responsibility to keep himself informed, his or herself informed?
To answer that question, as a consumer, don't you think it's the doctor's responsibility to keep him or herself informed?
Yeah, yes, that's true. But I mean, you're right. But I'm just saying, like, I guess I'm just prompting you because I was reading.
But I'm just saying that.
Yeah, no, but you're right. Yeah, you're right.
So that
you got me.
We live in a quick fix society. We live in a convenience society. We've been acculturated that we don't want to take the time to do our own due diligence, and that works against us as a society, and it works against us as consumers.
And our health, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So I would like to do now. I want you to tell our audience how you why you decided. What were the events that led up to you leaving the pharmaceutical industry?
Well,
and speaking out.
Well, I frequently say that I didn't just wake up one day and make this decision, because it was a spiritual awakening process for me. It was a process of observation and connecting the dots, basically, is what it was. It's an eye-opening experience for me that I was involved in an industry that lacked integrity, that was not doing the things that I felt were I don't even know how to say this, morally responsible to the general public and to their prescribing, body of providers and all. I just felt like the industry was missing the boat in a very big way, and no one was taking responsibility. It just appeared to me that if you brought up something that was out of integrity, people looked at you like you had horns and 3 eyes and you were purple. So it's like, my God, why did she bring that up, And I just got to the point that I realized that I had to get out of this industry because I was doing more harm than good, because I was good at what I did. This is my ego speaking now, and that's what this industry is about. So everyone, don't mistake anything that I say here. This industry is about ego. It's about recognition. It's about money. It's about power. It's about control. So I used to be one of those people, and I do have, I've had a fair amount of karma to reverse because of that, because I was the best of the best in any company that I ever worked for. I was always in the top 3% of sales. I was always traveling. I was always getting big bonus checks. But that was because I was good at influencing people. And then I started to have, a crisis of conscience, because I thought, my God, what if, as I found out in a couple of different occasions, that, I was giving bad information, not because I was giving bad information intentionally, but because the company was misinforming me and teaching me how to misinform others, and therefore, I started to witness the fallout because I was on the front lines. I was the one who was actually harming people unintentionally, but I was the one that had the responsibility for that. So that was when I decided to get out, basically, because I myself went through a personal crisis. I was put on antidepressants, and I had an adverse reaction, became manic psychotic. I was diagnosed as being bipolar, which amazingly I have not had any more bipolar episodes without drug intervention since then, and that was, in 1992. So I, basically decided that there was something very wrong with the industry, something very wrong with the way that my job was being promoted. And because, I was constantly told, hey, if you don't want to do this, we've got 500 people that are standing in line that would love to have your job, would love to have your benefits, would love to, work for this company. And so it was kind of like I was always under the threat that if I thought that something was outside of my integrity, that there was no room for integrity in pharmaceutical sales, basically. I wasn't told that point blank, but that was, in a roundabout way, that's what I was told, is, well, you need to get over that because, the bottom line is what we're looking at here and this is what we need to do. So, long story short, I got out and never intended to be a whistleblower, never intended to even look back. I was just glad to be out and not to be feeling, the way that I felt like a horrendous person for what I was doing and all the money I was making and knowing that people were being harmed in the process. And I went into the natural health industry. But I was only in the natural health industry a few years when my niece, who was attending Indiana University, she was a pre-med student, she was in a car accident, and she was prescribed Vicodin, hydrocodone, for pain, and she became addicted to the drug, and so she started taking more and more hydrocodone, and the sedative properties of her drugs made it difficult for her to study. So she went to a health food store while she was in finals at one point and was given ephedra, which is a stimulant. She purchased that and went home and took it with her hydrocodone to try to stay up all night and pull an all-nighter studying. And she became manic psychotic because of the drug interaction. She went to a local hospital, and they also diagnosed her as bipolar. Of course, when she gave them her family history, if you have any family history of bipolar illness, that automatically gets you flagged as well. So she was also diagnosed as bipolar, and they put her on this tremendous drug cocktail of like 14 different drugs by the time it was over, and she just became worse and worse and worse, and she dropped out of school. She became extremely violent and extremely depressed. And she actually ended up coming to live with me for a while, and she tried to cold turkey off of her drugs, and I wasn't aware at that time that you couldn't do that with antidepressants. But she cold turkeyed off of her drugs, and then she had another incident where she was arrested for domestic violence and was put in jail. And, of course, this caused even more issues for her with her mother and her sisters. And so she came to live with me again, and shortly after the jailing incident, she was, it was just difficult for me, guys, even after all these years, so I hope you'll bear with me here. You may have to edit a little bit. I'm sorry.
No problem, no problem.
My emotions in. She decided to take her own life because she was going to be forcibly taken back to the psychiatrist and put back on drugs, and she had made the decision that she did not want to take the psychiatric drugs because she knew that they were what was causing her situation to get worse. And so she first tried to hang herself by fashioning a rope out of her shoelaces, and she attached it to the ceiling fan. And the weight of her body pulled the ceiling fan out of the ceiling, so she was unsuccessful. So she went into her sister's room, and the reason she felt, I guess, this need to do this immediately was because my sister was on her way home from work to take her back to the psychiatrist, and they were going to forcibly place her back on drugs, and that's not what she wanted to do. So she went into her sister's room, adjacent room, and poured oil over herself from an angel-shaped lantern, and she set herself on fire, and she burned herself alive. After that happened, I had no place to go but out with the information that I had accumulated, with the knowledge that I had, with the research that I had been doing for my niece to find out why she was having the adverse events that she was having, and why she was so toxic and what was going on. And I was desperately trying to educate my family members and desperately trying to educate the physicians. I'd gone to the court system with her. I'd done everything that I possibly could to try to get people to hear what I was trying to tell them, that there was a problem with the antidepressant drug category, but no one would listen to me. It was my own personal experience that I had had. It was my niece's experience, and it was the torture that I witnessed for various patients that I observed in mental health institutions as well as hospitals, that I felt like it didn't matter to me anymore. I didn't care about my reputation. I didn't care what people thought about me. I didn't care about the labels. I had to speak out. Too many people were being harmed.
Yeah. Sorry. I think when people think of people like committing suicide, and they use words like crazy and psychotic, and they tend to be, like, I think, very dismissive, and they don't really get inside the mind of what that person is experiencing, what it might be like for that person, and why they will want to do something like that. And when I was reading your book, you described your experience too when you were going through Zoloft and what it was like for you. Do you mind talking about that? If not, then don't worry about it. But I thought that was really
so
good
far
insight.
removed from where I am now, that to be labeled as being crazy. And I mean, this is what happened to me. I'm having an adverse drug event. I'm educated about it more than your average person could possibly be, but yet I can't even convince the doctors that I'm having an adverse drug event. They're telling me, no, this is agitated depression. We need to increase the dose of your drug, And so, like an idiot, against my own common sense and my own knowledge, I follow the voice of authority, and I double the dose of my drug, and I become psychotic. I mean, it's just, that's what we do as a society, is we defer our power. We give our power away to others that we consider to have more knowledge or more experience. And that's what I did. And that was stupid of me, because then I started this path of being, a mental patient and seeing psychiatrists and being on all of these drugs, and I became suicidal. I developed what is called akathisia, and that's a Greek terminology for can't sit still, is literally what it means. And it causes an internal trembling and anxiety that really just makes a person want to end their life, because you cannot stand the feeling, the internal, the voices that you hear, the feelings that you have. It's all so overwhelming that you just want to end your existence. And I understand completely why people do that. And I myself had considered suicide, and I was driving around looking for a place that I could drive off a very steep and dangerous road where I live and make it look like an accident so that my son could still get my insurance benefits and everything. And it was an obsessive, compulsive thought that kept going through my head about how upset that, my husband would be when he came home and found if I hadn't let the dog out, and the dog had soiled in the house, and I couldn't remember whether I'd let the dog out, and that's probably what saved my life, was that obsession. So I went back home, and it broke that obsessive, compulsive idea to commit suicide.
Oh,
Wow.
wow. Sorry,
Yeah, that's
The logic behind that, ladies, I was worried about my husband being upset about the dog soiling in the house, not about me being discovered dead.
yeah.
So, your brain's just not working properly. And I was told I had a chemical imbalance. And that is the thing that I try to debunk with every single person that I talk to, is that if there is a brain chemistry imbalance, it is created by the psychiatric drugs or the other drugs that you have been put on. There is no way that they can prove that. There's no test that can prove that. That was a theory that was given because that's the way that the drugs work. So they take the mechanism of action and say, okay, well, antidepressant drugs work by reducing serotonin uptake. That's the reason the newer ones are called the SSRIs, the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So then they say, okay, so if it works by reducing serotonin, then that must mean that people who are depressed don't have enough serotonin. Mm-hmm. So, it's just, they take the mechanism of action and I hope I said that properly. They take the mechanism of action and they say, well, because antidepressants, they cause the reuptake of serotonin to be retarded or slowed, and therefore you have more serotonin circulating. So we're assuming that means that people who are depressed don't have enough serotonin. Well, serotonin is involved in so many other bodily functions. It's not just, a matter of creating good feelings or positive feelings. And so when you start looking at that as being the cause of depression, there's so many causes of depression. Depression is a symptom. It's not actually a disease state. It's a disorder. It's a symptom. And you can have various diseases that also have, that will create a depressive state. Endocrine disorders are one. Blood sugar problems are definitely one of the things that cause depression. You could have some kind of infectious disease. You could have some kind of yeast toxicity. That's another problem that can cause depression. So there's just all of these various things that can be creators of depression, and it's not one thing, but the antidepressant drugs actually only address one issue.
Mm. And, when you were telling your story about how you kind of knew better but you did it anyway and you went and had the drug, I could relate to that very well because I have a vaccine-damaged son, and when he was initially damaged, I knew, but then the doctor was so convincing that wasn't what caused it, I continued to vaccinate him like 3 times after that. And so it's something that, I can understand. I still hold that kind of like, why did I do that when I knew that was what was causing it? But then they're so convincing. I get that aspect of it. And when I try to talk to people about this, or I try to talk to them about some of the things you're saying in the pharmaceutical industry and that many of these drugs have side effects, including death, sometimes they rationalize, well, why would they want to kill me? I'm a patient. I'm a customer. Wouldn't they want to keep me as a customer? So what do you say to people that say things like that think that, it's irrational for the pharmaceutical industry to, put drugs out and vaccines and things that they know one of the side effects is actually, death or suicide,
Because it's like bad business for them.
Right.
That's like their logic. They're like, oh, it's bad business. Why would they do that?
Right.
If they want to make so much money.
Exactly.
So.
I don't know, how deep you guys have gone into the rabbit hole.
We're pretty deep in. Yeah. So we're open to anything, pretty much. Yeah. So whatever you want to talk about,
please.
Yeah.
Honey, ladies, I had that same thought. Well, surely they don't know this, because if they knew this, why on earth would they do this? And I also, and since you brought it up, and I don't generally, because, that's not my area of expertise, but when people started, saying, well, are you aware of the vaccine issue? Do you know about the vaccine issue several years ago? I started doing this 7 years ago now. So when people started bringing up the vaccine issue, I'm like, well, no, I really don't know anything about the vaccines. And so they started, here, you need to read this, you need to read this. And, of course, then I got into the vaccine issue, and then, oh, my God, then the rabbit hole got deeper, and then it got deeper. And as time went on, I got to where I was actually traumatized. I thought I was traumatized by what I knew about the pharmaceutical industry, but then I got really traumatized when I realized that the pharmaceutical industry was only one little piece of the pie, and that they were in collusion with the government and with several other entities to create a state of control that we're basically completely mind-controlled and enslaved. And so, when I started trying to tell people about that, then I get the crazy tag again. And that is so convenient. They put up the conspiracy theorist, banner so that anyone who questions anything that smacks our sensibilities or says, well, why in God's name would they do that? Well, then you're just thought to be crazy. You know, if you really do discover the true information about what's going on, about how they've experimented on our population, about how they experiment on our servicemen and women, about how they are using us as guinea pigs for various different agendas, folks. And, you know, I don't know that we really want to get into all of that here, but I challenge anyone who doesn't think that the pharmaceutical industry has a devious side to it. I challenge them to do their own due diligence and then come and argue that issue with me. I will, if they'll read my book and they'll do their own due diligence and have an intelligent debate with me, I will help educate or debate this issue with anyone. But most people will not do their own research. Most people will not take the time, the energy, and they would just as soon listen to their authorities and do exactly what you and I did, April, and they'll risk life and limb because of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's so frustrating. You know, they use conspiracy theorists like a slur.
Yeah.
It's such like a derogatory like slur. It's very like, and yeah, it's very frustrating that people won't, you know, and it's in the age of information age we're living now on the internet. It's so easy, but still people won't even take the time to do that. So I mean,
they'll say to me, they'll say, well, I can get on the internet, but then who do I know what's a good source? Well, what did you just say to me earlier, April? You knew, you had a gut feeling that something was wrong, and you didn't follow your gut feeling.
Right.
I try to tell people discernment is what we need to learn, people, because not only is there good information out there, but I can guarantee you from my experience in the pharmaceutical industry, there are excellent disinformation campaigns out there. They have learned that they can accomplish more through disinformation than they can through keeping their mouth shut.
Oh, really? Like what type of disinformation? How does that work?
This is any time that something negative is going to come out about a drug or about a pharmaceutical company, they are extremely proactive, and they will tell all of their reps they'll hit the field running to get to the highest volume prescribers first with their storyline. They will get all the major media to follow, and they'll put a press release out. And, of course, the major media, as we all know, just runs with whatever the pharmaceutical industry says is fact. And, you know, this is the latest this and this and that, and they'll just go on and they'll be their little prostitutes for them. And so we never get good information because before we even hear the facts that are going to come out, there's already a disinformation campaign that's been launched. So most people, the first thing they hear, well, they heard it on CNN or they heard it on Fox News, and therefore it's gospel, right? And that's straw man argument, so that when the real information comes out and they finally get out and it leaks out on alternative media or whatever, then they'll say, oh, well, they already debunked that. Oh, so-and-so already said, well, that's just a conspiracy theory. And then everyone just rides along and lets it go. And that's why we're in the boat that we're in. That's why we have all the missing children that we have in the world. That's why we have all the vaccine-damaged children that we have in the world. That's why we have all the psychiatric patients that we have in the world. And if people would look at the statistics and look at the numbers, they would realize that there is an agenda. There is an agenda behind all of this, and it's a control agenda.
Wow.
Yeah. No, we believe you.
Yeah, we do. And I think that this is sorry, Virstyne, go ahead.
I was just saying we've gone that far, maybe even a little further, but yeah, we definitely agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, I know. Because like you, I started going down the rabbit hole too, and then all of a sudden it just kind of made sense. I went, oh, this is what's going on. Because, you know, I had a lot of people ask me, well, why would they want to kill their patients? And I would kind of go, yeah, that's true. That is logical. You would think that's true. But then when you realize that they don't really care about that fact and that there is actually a control agenda, you kind of go, oh, okay. Well, that's why this is happening, and people are dying and they don't seem to care, don't seem to be concerned about that. And the disinformation campaign you mentioned, I think when I started to really recognize that that was going on was the way that they attacked Dr. Andrew Wakefield. You could really see through if you research the work that he did, and the information that was being put out to the public, you could tell that they weren't. There was absolutely no truth in what they were saying at all.
Absolutely, and that's what they're notorious for. And I've read Dr. Wakefield's book, Callous Disregard, and he's a phenomenal researcher, and I applaud what he has done, to try to speak out. But that's exactly what they do, is they destroy reputations, they destroy careers, they destroy credibility. And so that was always, my concern initially. And then I thought, you know what? I've got this label on me. I'm some mental patient. Who's going to listen to me? And then I thought, everyone's going to listen to me because I don't have an agenda.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Did I desire to be a poster child for psychiatry? No, that was not my life's dream. But this is what I've been chosen to do. This is what I have to do, because I can't look people in the eye and tell them what I did unless I tell them what I'm doing.
Yeah. It's interesting because I find that personally, I'm more moved and I'm more inclined to listen to people or change my mind when I hear people's personal testimonies as opposed to like statistical evidence. And sometimes when I'm talking to people about this stuff, they're like, I want to see studies, I want to see statistics and stuff. And I mean, that's all and well to a certain degree, but why do you think that there's some people that don't even want to be bothered with listening to personal testimony, or they want to get statistical evidence or studies instead?
But they need to remember that statistics are just the semantics of research. Statistics can be skewed to say anything. I learned that through the pharmaceutical industry as well. It's just how you couch it. It's just like, if you're a wordsmith, you know how to say something, and you can say something without actually saying it.
Yeah.
Right. And you said in one of your interviews, I saw that they won't ever share a cure, and that they'll hide a cure, that, it's not about curing, it's just about suppression of symptoms. And so, but what we're seeing, I think, now is a lot of the natural health movement and the people kind of fighting back and sort of sharing cures now, people in the natural news and stuff. And, like myself and my community, in the autism community, a lot of us are not going the pharmaceutical route. We're doing dietary interventions and natural healing. And so how do they try to hide that? What are they doing are they threatened by that? Are they threatened by the natural health industry?
Absolutely, they're threatened by that. And in fact, that was one of the things when I was still a rep that I questioned, because I personally had done my own personal healing through alternative health. And so, I actually had a nickname. I was called Dr. Gwen Medicine Woman for the last few years.
That's funny.
And you got any kava? I can't take my Xanax because we're drug testing, or, I can't do this or I can't do that. And so I'd be passing out my little herbs and remedies and things at, meetings and stuff. So, and I also got in trouble for, when I would go around and talk to doctors and I was selling a drug for BPH, benign prostate hyperplasia. And I found out that saw palmetto could do just as good a job, and it was extremely inexpensive. And so I started talking, when my doctors would tell me about all the side effects of the drug that I was selling, I would say, well, hey, if you got this little patient and he doesn't really have a big problem, use some saw palmetto. Well, I brought this up to one of the directors at a meeting, and I said, hey, we're really getting a lot of competition out of the natural health community now. What are we going to do about that? And the response that I got was, well, don't worry about them, because if we can't beat them, we'll buy them. And if we can't buy them, we'll put them out of business. Have you heard of Codex Alimentarius?
Yes. We interviewed Dr. Rima, actually.
What's that? And he said, look it up.
Yeah.
So that's when I went into my research mode about Codex and found out that they were going to eliminate our ability to even purchase supplements, vitamin C, vitamin E, things in the strengths and quantities that we needed for our health. They're going to try to make everything prescription controlled, and so that the pharmaceutical industry could get a piece of all the pie, and that we would not be able to go out and to to be proactive and to, make ourselves healthy in the ways that we knew how.
Wow, so sinister.
It is. Yeah, and like,
I have companies, and I have to tell you this just because this is funny and you wouldn't know this. This is the irony of the work that I do, and this is a spiritual calling for me. So I laugh every time something like this happens. But when I interviewed to get out of the pharmaceutical industry, I went to work for a natural foods company called Nature's Way in Utah. Have you heard of them?
Yes.
The last question from the manager was, so what are your concerns about leaving the pharmaceutical industry to come into the natural foods industry? And I said, really, the only concern that I have is the company would be bought by a pharmaceutical company. 2 months later, we were purchased by a pharmaceutical company, I kid you not, in Germany. And I was like, oh, my God, it's like I predicted it, and there it is. It happened. And I was able to witness the quality of the product sourcing go down. I was able to witness the culture of the company destroyed. I was able to witness they took like 140 reps and turned them into 40 reps to cover the entire country. It was just crazy what I watched them do after they got control of that natural foods company. And I had to leave that company eventually because of that.
Jeez.
They're
ruthless. They're ruthless. I mean, wow.
They're not only ruthless, they're smart. And we've got to start being more intelligent in the way that we deal with these entrepreneurs.
Yeah, well, they're psychotic. They're psychopaths, and that's like, what, they don't seem to have a moral conscience about what they do but the fact that they're intelligent makes them even more dangerous,
No, I agree with you when we say they, though. Who is they? It's the upper echelons, the very people at the highest tops that are running these companies, because mostly the people who are doing their dirty work, people like me, that don't have a clue. It's so compartmentalized that you're not allowed to know anything that you don't need to know. It's like the military, You're only allowed to know what you need to know, and you're only given the information they want you to know. And beyond that, you're in the dark. So the people that are the most indoctrinated are the people in the lower echelons of the corporations. They are clueless what they're doing. Trust me, they're clueless.
When you were in the pharmaceutical industry, did you try and share some of your concerns with your other coworkers?
I tried sharing concerns. That's what I was saying, and I tried sharing them at meetings and things like that. And they would look at me like I was an absolute, like I'd fallen off another planet.
Well, I mean, I guess, did you have anybody that sided with you or that were interested in what you had to say while you were working there?
No, you have to realize, look, we're Americans. I'm going to give you an example that's going to step on some toes. We're Americans, and as Americans, we've been acculturated to believe that we're the good guys in the world, that we go in and that we help people, that we preserve democracy, that we don't kill innocent children and women and all that kind of stuff. We're told a storyline, and we buy it. That's exactly what we're doing with the pharmaceutical industry. We're being given a storyline, and we're buying it. But our intelligence tells us things. If we're such good guys, why do we torture people? Why did we waterboard people? Why do we go over and use depleted uranium weapons? Why do we do the things that we do if we're the good guys? That's the thing that more people within these corporations need to start asking, particularly in the pharmaceutical industry. If we're the good guys, why would we do this? Why would we hide this information? Why would we make it difficult for people to uncover these things? Why would we take away the competition that is serving humanity and give them drugs that is harming humanity? Those are the questions that we have to ask as a society, but we have to ask them as individuals because these corporations cannot run without individuals. They, the psychopaths that run the countries, that run the world, that run the corporations, are the minority. We are the majority. If we have a moral conscience, if more of us will take our calcium and grow a backbone, people, and speak out, then we wouldn't be in this situation because they would not be able to hide it from everyone if we would all start asking questions and we would all start speaking out about what we know.
Yeah, sure.
Gwen, have you had a chance to look at Obama's recent executive order on the gun control ban? Have you had a chance to read that, or have you heard about that yet?
I've heard about it, but I haven't had a chance to read it yet. Is there something you wanted to share with me?
Well, no, I just was curious because, he's talking about the assault weapon ban, but we know that there is a direct correlation between drugs and gun violence and violence in general. and I mean pharmaceutical drugs and also illegal drugs as well. And one of the things that I found interesting in the executive order was that there's a lot of a spy. Well, he's looking to have doctors kind of spy on their patients, and they're talking about being able to go and get medical records that the federal government will essentially be able to request medical records without subpoena or without any type of normal legal avenues to take. So what do you think that something like that, what kind of effect would that have on the pharmaceutical industry, or do you think that there would be some kind of correlation with them in helping to try and get this executive order put through? And would that benefit them?
I think that this harms the pharmaceutical industry in any way. In fact, I think they're probably just thrilled out of their gourds that this whole thing has been redirected to the gun control issue and away from the drug issue, because that's, you know, there's so many of the truth seekers that are speaking out now when these incidents happen about the correlation and the connection to drug use. But, you know, the last couple of events that we've had, and particularly the Sandy Hook shootings that, you know, have caused this latest ruckus with the gun control issue, things don't add up.
No.
I just say that, you know, people got upset with me because I didn't jump on the bandwagon right away and say, oh, you know, this is a drug-related shooting. But it just didn't smack of all of my experience from the drug-related shootings, just like the one in Colorado didn't smack of the same adverse drug reaction that causes violence. There were too many anomalies, and too smacked of, to be quite honest, was a disinformation campaign like I was telling you about that the pharmaceutical industry puts out. It smacked of disinformation, and I could not follow the reporting, and the stories were so convoluted that I thought, somebody has really gone to great efforts to make sure that we will never, ever be, that only the most diligent researchers will ever find out what really happened.
Yeah, it struck me right away, too, because when I was watching it as it happened, I mean, within the hour they had named the lone gunman, Adam Lanza, and he was diagnosed with Asperger's, which is not, I mean, my son has autism. He's also on the autistic spectrum, so I'm going, really? A guy with autism went in there and he was able to figure all that out and get in there, and it just doesn't.
And not only that, but really, we're talking about one of the states that has the most strict gun control laws, and you're talking about someone, see, they're trying to impose legislation that wouldn't have even prevented this event. Think about it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, if it happens the way that they say that it did.
Media is to purport that it happened in their final storyline, not the first 3 or 4 stories that they got, which are all different from the final storyline that came out. You know, if indeed that is what happened, then the legislation would not have had any effect.
Right. Yeah, there was some cover-up.
And the other issue that I think is a real big key to that is that they found supposedly Adam Lanza with the 2 handguns inside the school, but yet the
rifle was in the car.
Right, the rifle, which was supposedly the weapon that was used to murder all the children, was in the trunk of the car.
Right. No, yeah, and I think the car was not even registered to Adam or his mother, and yet they were able to find him so quickly. But he was carrying his brother's ID. I'm like, how'd you guys know who he was?
Right, and he had
that doesn't
for years, but yet he had his brother's current ID on him. So I mean, there was just too many convoluted facts.
Yeah.
Too many inconsistencies, and that's what I'm saying. I think that, you know, and I'm not suggesting that I know what happened. So please don't anybody call me or email me or tell me that I don't know what the hell I'm talking about, because I really don't. And that's what I'm trying to tell everyone else, is I don't think you do either, though. You know, we know the truth about a lot of things, and the only reason that I'm using that as an example is because this is the way that the pharmaceutical industry conducts its business, is through collusion, disinformation, misinformation, and, you know, and that's exactly what's going on right now in these cases.
Right, and confusion, too, don't you think? Because it's like you were saying how you can't follow the reports because there's so much contradiction. And so I think sometimes there's sort of, it's like deliberately confusing for people because they can't follow it and they can't, you know, do you see that as part of the disinformation campaign to just make it?
Absolutely. It's called a straw man campaign.
Yeah.
So that, like I said, once the real information comes out, you'll have no clue that that's really the information. It'll be so lost in all of the other convoluted details.
Right. Yeah, and I think that happens on the other side, too, because then once something like this, it sparks, obviously, people who follow this information and who do, research conspiracies, and then they're going to go after it, too, and then they're going to, unknowingly or maybe even on purpose, because they might even have people in there trying to spread disinformation as well. And so who knows exactly what happened there. But, I mean, I'm with you on that. I thought, this doesn't add up, because pharmaceutical could potentially have him kill himself and his mother or something like that, but to really be able to plan something so elaborate just didn't strike me as what, I thought, he might have been on drugs, but I don't think that is what caused this event to happen. So,
and I just tend to question why somebody who wanted to commit suicide would be wearing a flak jacket in the first place. It just doesn't make sense.
Right. And a mask, and why would he have ID if he was wearing a mask? I mean, if he obviously didn't want to be identified, so...
I mean, I'm just saying, there were too many questions that needed to be asked by real journalists, and of course, I know you guys have probably seen where the poor Floridian professor who suggested that some of the media events were hyped and they used actors. I mean, they tore him apart.
We're actually trying to get him. We're trying to actually get him on the show to interview him. But yeah,
they gutted him, and you know what? That told me that somebody's too close to the truth, because they will not give. And they even said that we do not give conspiracy theories the time of day. But this one's so ridiculous. We're going to bring it to everybody's attention, and we're going to absolutely destroy this guy's reputation. Well, they didn't destroy his reputation, and I don't blame him for not going in to be attacked, because that's what they were inviting him for.
Exactly. Anderson Cooper just destroys people. He doesn't even give him, but you saw what he did to Andrew Wakefield. I would never go on a show.
Right.
He didn't even let the guy talk.
I turned him down, too, for that reason.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Smart. Good. Well, Gwen, this has been great. This has been a really, really good interview, and I'm really glad that we were able to get you on. We're just about out of time here, but I want to thank you so much. And please tell us again where our audience can go to buy your book and to research the work that you've done.
My website is GwenOlsen.com, GwenOlsen.com. My book is Confessions of an RX Drug Pusher, and I would appreciate it if you could buy it from my website, because that's basically that, and my speaking engagements are the way that I fund my work. And I just would like to say to everyone, be proactive, and remember that it not only takes a village to raise a child, it takes a village to protect one. And God bless all of you and your children.
Oh, thank you. God bless you. Yeah, that was, yeah. So everybody, please go and buy Gwen's book. We really highly recommend it, and, we really appreciate the work that she's doing. So we're going to take a short break, and when we get back, Virstyne and I will close the show. But once again, thank you so much, Gwen.
Thank you.
This is frankly extraordinary. We are trying to do in a few months, something that might typically take 10 years. We've had accelerated reviews of all our applications, regulatory and ethical approvals and so on. And we got going in a few weeks. And we're now trying to proceed so quickly that if things go well, by the end of this year, this vaccine might actually be being used in the 3 affected countries in West Africa. And if that happens, that would be truly extraordinary. But by the end of the year, even if we have enough vaccine manufactured to start using it, we have enough data showing that it's safe, and we have measured lots of immune responses, that still doesn't tell us that it actually works. So we're going to have to figure out a way of using the vaccine and at the same time evaluating it. And there's a great deal of discussion about how you might do that now.
Exactly, and then there's an awful lot of discussion as well as to whether, precisely because of these issues you've raised, this is actually ethical. Do you have any trouble with that? Are you discussing that at your conferences and as you propose to distribute this?
So I don't think there's any discussion about whether it's ethical to use a vaccine in a phase 1 trial, such as the one we're doing at the moment, in very well-informed individuals who have 15 or 20 pages of information that they have to read about the trial and the possible risks. That's not the issue. The issue is once you've shown safety in those individuals, do you go on to deploy the vaccine in a very large population, ideally of healthcare workers who are at greatest risk, without knowing that the vaccine actually works? Or instead, do you wait several months, maybe 6 months, maybe a year, to prove absolutely that the vaccine has a certain efficacy, and then start thinking about deploying it widely? And if you wait that long, the epidemic might either be over, or the whole thing might be completely out of control. So that's the challenge, to figure out what the best thing to do, given those conflicting priorities as I've described them.
Results from the first stage of human testing for a potential Ebola vaccine appear promising. The National Institutes of Health's initial trial found the experimental vaccine so far is safe for humans and produced an immune response. Researchers found anti-Ebola antibodies in the blood of all 20 healthy adult volunteers. Half the group received a higher dose with corresponding results.
Virtually all of the people who received the higher dose got a very robust antibody response, which is the classical response that vaccines elicit.
Some participants also developed another key type of virus-fighting immune cells. There were no serious adverse effects. The findings mean the potential vaccine can move to the next phase of testing, which would involve thousands of participants and could start early next year.
We're hoping to start this much, much larger efficacy trial in first Liberia to determine if it actually works.
The vaccine being tested was co-developed by the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases and GlaxoSmithKline. It includes genetic material from 2 Ebola strains, including the one fueling the deadly outbreak in West Africa, which has now infected nearly 16,000 people.
I'm Gwen Olson, and I am a former member of the pharmaceutical industry, actually a 15-year veteran of the pharmaceutical industry. And I worked as both a specialty rep in the industry and as a hospital rep for a period of time. I also was in the field calling on general practitioners and other doctors in the first part of my career. However, I had a change of consciousness while I was in the industry and determined that I needed to leave, and I also had a moral obligation to share with other people what I had experienced, what I had participated in, and what I had seen. And the impetus for all of that primarily was that I had an adverse reaction to antidepressants in 1992 when Zoloft first came out. I was in the midst of a divorce, and my primary care physician told me that because I was losing weight and was a little despondent, that I should try a new, wonderful SSRI antidepressant that had come onto the market. And SSRIs being the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. They were fairly new at that time. And there wasn't that body of information out there that you can now find on the internet and just about anywhere you look about the serious adverse reactions that people have to antidepressant drugs. So long story short, I went home and took just a couple of days worth of the Zoloft and started to have horrendous reactions. I couldn't sit still. I had racing thoughts. I felt palpitations like I was going to have a heart attack, severe anxiety, severe agitation. There was an internal tremor that was so severe that at times I would actually get into a fetal position and hold myself in order to control the shaking. So I called my family practitioner and said, hey, I'm having an akathisia reaction to Zoloft. I need to get off of this drug. And he says, well, it's not possible that you're having an akathisia reaction because that's not in the package insert. And I might back up and let you know that as a pharmaceutical rep, I had sold haloperidol, Haldol, a drug for schizophrenia, and was very familiar with an akathisia reaction because I had been trained about what these reactions were and how people, responded to medication when they had an akathisia reaction. And so I was really just, surprised that my physician wasn't aware that this could happen on an antidepressant drug. And even though he told me that we should double the dose, which I did comply and did initially for another couple of days, I eventually called him back and said, hey, listen, you've got to get me off of this drug. I am having an akathisia reaction. I am just coming out of my skin. This drug isn't working for me. So rather than put me through a washout period, which would have been the appropriate thing to do, getting the toxicity of the chemical that I had in me completely out of my system, we immediately went into a Prozac regimen. And of course, I'd only taken Prozac another day or two when I completely became manic psychotic. And I had no recollection. I'll be honest with you. I had severe memory loss around the period of time that this happened. And so if I hadn't been a chronic journaler, and I journal nearly every day, I wouldn't have been aware of what was happening to me. But I obviously started hallucinating and becoming delusional. And at that point in time, I called my physician back again, and they were trying to hospitalize me. But having been a pharmaceutical rep that spent my time in the corridors of mental institutions and in psychiatric wards, there was no way in HE double toothpicks anybody was getting my ass in a mental institution. So I fought and fought and fought not to go into a mental institution, because I knew from my own experience that once I got behind those closed doors, they could do anything they wanted to me. And once I got one of their major labels, then I was going to be a lifelong customer for the pharmaceutical industry, and I was well aware of that. So I went on my own alternative healing path after they had given me a total of 14 different antidepressants without a washout period, and I was a complete chemical basket case. So I wasn't able to function, I wasn't able to work, I was on disability long term for several months before I was even able to go back into the field and call on doctors again. And at that time, I was labeled as being bipolar and told that I had a defective brain chemistry and that I would need to be on these drugs for the rest of my life. And I knew that, in fact, that this was not what was happening to me. I knew that I was having serious adverse drug reactions, and that if I didn't stop taking the chemicals that they were forcing on me, that I was going to have permanent brain damage, which in fact I have. I have permanent memory loss of several months of time around that period that I have absolutely no recollection of anything that happened. And I also have a kind of memory loss that occurs with stroke patients, in that if I'm very fatigued or if I'm extremely busy, sometimes I just can't even remember from one moment to the next. I can lose my train of thought in the middle of a sentence very easily, and I have never, ever, prior to having had these adverse reactions, had a problem with being articulate. I can talk anybody's leg off. So this was something that I just felt very adamantly about, and I started advising anyone that I knew who was on antidepressant drugs that, hey, there's something wrong with the antidepressant drugs. There's stuff about these things that they don't know about yet. You know, you may not want to be taking them. I had a very severe adverse reaction to them, but it wasn't anything that forced me to get out of the industry at that time. To be honest with you, the position was such a lucrative position that I was very hard-pressed to find anything else where I could make the kind of money that I was making and have the kind of benefits that I had. Because I had a company car, I had full insurance benefits for health and eye care and dental care and all of that, and an expense account that I could never spend all of my expense money any given expense period. So, you know, those were things that I missed quite a bit when I would try to go out and work in other areas. But I eventually knew that, you know, I was a part of the problem by even working part-time in the industry. And I left the industry in 2000 and went into natural health and healing, because that was how I had actually found my healing after my adverse reaction. And to be honest, I spend all of my time now educating people on the adverse effects of psychiatric drugs and other drugs as well, but also the initiative that Big Pharma has out there trying to label as many Americans as possible as being mentally ill, so that they can put us all on psychiatric drugs which have not been proven to be effective and are extremely dangerous and are strictly a social control mechanism. And that is what I do now for a living, is I've written a book called Confessions of an RX Drug Pusher, and that came out in August of 2005, and I'm getting ready to revamp and relaunch this year. And I have been touring all of the United States and Canada on a child advocacy campaign, screening the movie Prescription Suicide, and lecturing to chiropractic physicians and their staff members about the adverse effects of these drugs so that they will be able to identify patients that they see these drugs in their charts that are having adverse events and be able to counsel them as to what to do in order to control the adverse events or to discontinue the drugs if they choose to do so.
You're listening to find us at truthertease.com and our store at shop.truthertease.com. So, hey, Virstyne, we just interviewed Gwen Olson. How was that?
Yeah, it was really, really informative. She's a really wise lady, really nice, really intelligent. It was really, really good to have her on. I've been wanting to have her on for a while, so I'm glad we got to finally meet her and talk to her. Yeah, very emotional too.
It was
at times.
It was emotional, and she had been through a really horrific experience that she described with her niece. And even herself, like that, and she so openly about it. I was touched and moved that she would talk to us about it like that. And then when she, but it was also, it was so painful. I mean, I can't imagine going through that.
Yeah.
Your niece, that was just awful. The way she committed suicide. Man.
You know what, though, too? It's I feel it's very important for people when they're trying to get people to wake up and understand what's going on. It's really important for people to also tell their personal stories, in a very honest way. Because I realize, too, there are people that you tell them stuff, and there's some people well, show me the statistics, and show me the facts, and show me the studies. I mean, and that's all good and well, but there just comes to a time, too, where I think, honestly, at the end of the day, people are affected by each other's stories, first and foremost.
Right, and when when she brought up the fact that there's all this disinformation anyway, so when people say, "Oh, well, show me the studies," well, all they do, she explains that all they do is they flood the market with every study they can come up with that are contradicting each other, and so really people don't know what studies to believe because they have so many different things, and that's part of how they create this disinformation and how they get people so confused about whether or not these drugs or these vaccines or these things are safe because they have so many conflicting studies and one will study this part of it and one will study this part of it and they never seem to really study the whole thing. It's they leave pertinent information out or they
but that's at the end of the day too. I really believe it comes down to faith, really. And because you're going to have to end up, trusting your own gut and trusting, figuring things out for yourself, really, at the end of the day. A lot of people don't want to do that, though. They don't really want to use their brain or use their intuition to really make a decision, it's very frustrating at times. But at the end of the day, I mean, like, that, to me, because, you can just, pollute statistics and studies and sway them toward, whoever's paying you wants you to sway them toward you. You at the end you have to figure it out. You have to follow your conscience, your guts, use discernment. I mean,
right. Right, because they can always just try and disinform people and program them. And it was interesting how when she learned about how the pharmaceutical industry does all this disinformation campaign, and then she used that knowledge and that critical thought to then sort of decipher the Sandy Hook thing. Because I remember we started kind of talking about that, and she was getting like, I didn't really believe that story, Because it's like once you wake up on one side, you kind of start to see how they use the same disinformation for other things too.
It's kind of the same script a lot of the times they use.
Yeah, exactly, and
the same formula that they use. So you just kind of read between the lines and.
Right. Yeah, and we talked a little bit about that Anderson Cooper thing. Remember that? Did you saw that, right?
Yeah, we were talking about the Wakefield interview. Was that? Or the one recently where he's attacking, they call them internet conspiracy theorists.
Right.
Other slur that they're using, right?
Yeah, he's going after the professor in Florida who wrote the timeline of the Sandy Hook, and they were attacking that guy, I guess just calling him a conspiracy theorist. They were saying it was repugnant the way people were going after the family members, and I think that is weird if people are doing that. If people are in fact doing that.
Yeah, I mean that's not going to really solve anything. Even if I wouldn't put it past them to do anything like that, but that's just something I don't like really talk about stuff that I can't prove.
Right.
Because, it's hard to get people to listen to the stuff that you even can prove, and you're like, no, I'm telling the truth. Go look it up. You Google it. And they're like, I don't want to waste my time on useless conspiracy theories. Like, it's right there. Like, you can see if I'm lying, but they don't even want to do that. So,
yeah, exactly.
With that, though, I just think that, it's very, what's the word I'm looking for? I lost my train of thought. I'm embarrassed.
Like it's very closed-minded, or it's
very
unyielding.
I don't know what the deal is. I just think that because it's so funny that people that want, I find two people that want quote unquote so-called proof or statistics and stuff. They're basically. They haven't even thought about how they formed their original opinion in the first place. They're just basically regurgitating what's been fed to them. They don't really do their due diligence.
Oh, no.
And I think if people look at the official story, they would see that, the quote, the official stories, because it's changed so many times, heck, you would see that it's holier than a slice of Swiss cheese. It's like, it's so many, just things that just don't make sense to, common sense.
Right.
So, I think people just hear they're like, crazed gunmen, dead kids, guns are bad, take them away. That's it. But they're not really looking at the whole picture. They're not even really looking at the information that's been given to them. But yet, but the thing about the Anderson Cooper thing, I think that's actually kind of a good sign because had this guy not, this professor is onto something, because if he wasn't, they wouldn't have brought it up. So he's obviously threatened by this guy, and this guy's a tenured professor. So he's not just some Joe Schmo. How do you say Joe Schmo? He's not just some dude. He's not like the dude in the hole in the ground, that's for information. It's just that he's very, very intelligent. He's thought it out, he's laid all his facts out on the ground.
Right.
And people can go look at his memory blog? Yeah. Memory hole.
Down the memory hole or something like that?
Let me look. It's memoryblog.com. It's so funny too. I saw
memoryholeblog.com.
Memoryholeblog.com, yeah. It's so funny too because I saw the follow-up to that interview, because he did an initial one where he was talking about, these internet conspiracy theorists, and it's sickening, and they need to be stopped, and I'm keeping them honest, it's me, Anderson Cooper, keeping them honest. Yeah, like, right.
So Orwellian.
Double speaker.
Double speak.
So I saw the interview, and then he did a follow-up, and it's so funny because he was, for the first interview, or the first report that he did, he's like, well, I'm not going to even tell you the name of his blog because I don't want to give him recognition. But the second follow-up he did to it, he actually, he showed the blog, and he talked about the blog, and then he was like, look at how they have me, he goes, and I see that picture that he used of me, it looks like I'm on a rant, and I look evil, and I'm like, kind of like you did Andrew Wakefield, kind of like that.
Right, exactly.
Kind of like you lit him in a bad light, and made you look, really nice and bright with, like, good makeup, and you made him look, Andrew Wakefield look short and stubby, and Andrew Wakefield's like, fine.
Right.
And then, you didn't give him a chance to speak? Is that kind of like, he's such a little bitch.
Right.
It's like, like he can dish it out, but he can't take it. It's very interesting.
No, I know, and it's just so obvious. And CNN, he works for CNN, which is the Ted Turner company, and they had we were talking about wanting Amber Lyons on our show. Hopefully, we can get her on at some point. But she was the whistleblower who used to work at CNN. She was an investigative journalist, and she came out and said that she quit her job because she was tired of having the Obama administration tell them what they could and could not report on. And she said straight up, it was coming straight from the White House. It wasn't even, it wasn't like some underlings. They were just basically straight up, this is what you can report on, this is what you cannot report on. We want you to highlight these subjects. We don't want you to talk about this. And experienced it firsthand, where she was doing an investigation about these protesters that were being tortured, and they wouldn't let her report on it. And so she said, you know what?
Yeah, I mean, and it's so funny. I don't think people even realize that, you know, as a journalist, you're a truth seeker. Those are the original truthers.
Right.
You know, or like the investigative journalist, because you hear a story and then you go after the facts and you try and give it an unbiased view, and then you let the people make up their mind instead of just feeding the people. When you're feeding the people a point of view, not giving them really both sides, it's propaganda. And it's so funny too. When I was listening to the report, like Anderson Cooper accused the truthers of being like that, you know. Right. They're like, oh yeah, they're just looking for only evidence that supports their point of view. I'm like, you're doing the same thing. You're such a liar.
Right.
I went to like throw a tomato at his face. He made me so angry. Like, you're such a liar.
He's a total liar, and he's part of the disinformation, and that's just part of what he does. I mean, CNN, they don't provide you with any information, you know. We'll have to dig into that deeper. That's like a whole nother Truther Talk, because that's actually a really important issue that I think people need to know about, the fact that these mainstream, you know, because there are some people who will not believe what you say unless it comes from a mainstream source.
Yeah.
And that what they don't know is that not only is it propaganda, but it's actually programming. I mean, they're really just programming the people to believe the way they want them to believe.
Yeah.
And it's really bad, you know, and you can see it on whatever channel you look. If you want to go CNN, which is like more on the left, or you want to go Fox News, which is on the right, they both do the same thing. And it's really gross. And it really, I mean, if you spend any time, if you're awake and you spend any time trying to watch those programs, you get a headache. I mean, you'll just start oh my God, I want to pass out.
I feel like there are like bullets of lies being pelted at my head. I can't even like watch it. Like my mom would be, and I'll just be like, I can't. Like, I can't. Like I just. It's just so obvious. It's so like before. You know, I guess before I started to use discernment, before I started to pick things apart and stuff like that, you know, it wasn't as obvious. But now it's just sickening to me.
Right.
It's sickening.
Yeah. It's sickening, and it's like, because it's not even, I mean, it's not even real journalism. CNN admitted that they don't even have journalists anymore. They don't even have
investigative journalists, right? Yeah.
Right. They just have people, I mean, so essentially, what are these people? They're just spokesmen. They just read.
They're just readers.
They're actors. They read their scripts.
Yeah.
They're models, you know. So it doesn't, I mean, they don't, if they're not investigating anything, then what are they actually doing? So, I don't know, I'm kind of glad that guy didn't go on Anderson Cooper just to be fed to the lions, and I thought that was Gwen said they've offered her too, and she's turned him down because she doesn't want to just be fed to the lions, because she's smart. She knows that these guys, CNN, I mean, who do they work for? Who's like 40%, 50% of their sponsors are pharmaceutical related. You know, I mean, it's drug companies. They're promoting their drugs. They're promoting, you know, Bayer aspirin or whatever. I mean, just on and on and on. You can go and find. I mean, 50% is generous. It might even be more than that.
Yeah.
So
I would say it's probably more.
It's probably more. It's probably, you know, close to 60, 70%. So that's where their bread is buttered. Of course, they're not going to bite the hand that feeds them. So why does anyone expect that they're going to get unbiased news when they know that who these people's sponsors are?
Yeah.
You know?
But, you know, I guess, you know, a lot of people don't know that. And I guess we're trying little by little to wake people up. People don't really know if they have a choice, too, I think, other than, you know, especially, and then if they're getting fed, you know, propaganda from the mainstream news saying that, alternative news is evil and bad and these people are crazy and, you know, then they're going to be like, oh, I'm scared. You know, I'm scared of Google. I'm not going to look things up for myself. It freaks me out. You know?
No, right. I mean, they just think that Anderson Cooper is, you know, just a straight shooter, and just keeping it honest. It's like the most Orwellian thing I've ever heard, because all he's doing is he's lying. He's trying to get people to, I mean, when all those people were interviewing, when Anderson Cooper and George Stephanopoulos, all these people were interviewing Andrew Wakefield, and they kept saying that they read his book. I was like, no, you didn't. I can so tell you didn't. And stop lying. Because it was obvious they didn't read his book, you know, because they didn't know anything about it. And so, otherwise they would know that he didn't lie, that everything he said was the truth.
Yeah, that was, you know, that interview with Andrew Wakefield is really an eye opener for me because yeah, it made me so angry, and it was just like and you know, during the interview before, this is before I'd probably even completely woken up a bit, but I was just like, you're not even letting him talk. I'm like, how are you going to have somebody on your show and you're going to tell them what you think instead of like letting them speak so you can actually hear their side of the story?
Right.
It does that.
Yeah. No, Anderson Cooper does.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Anderson Cooper, who used to work for the CIA, just saying. I don't know. I mean, I'm just going to say it. I'm just saying. That's just a fact. Yeah. So, anyway, on that note, Anderson Cooper, we are going to close out the show because we're out of time. And we want to thank our guest, Gwen Olson. She's awesome. We hope that everybody looks up her website and buys her book. It's Confessions of an RX Drug Pusher. And we were really honored to have her on the show, and hopefully we can talk to her again sometime. But she was great, and it's a really important interview, I think, don't you?
Yes, it was. It was very.
Yeah, it's really, really good. So I'm really glad that we got to meet her and talk to her. So thanks, everybody. We are Truth or Talk. You can find us at truthertease.com or storeshop.truthertease.com. Signing out. Peace, truth, and love.
Peace, truth, and
Microsoft founder Bill Gates has committed over $10 billion over the next decade to deliver vaccines to the world's poorest countries. Gates made the pledge while speaking at the World Economic Forum in Switzerland, saying that this year needs to be the decade of vaccines. He said the commitment more than doubled the $4.5 billion his charity foundation has already given to vaccine research already.
Sweden being a great example of a generous donor. So at this milestone, we're essentially redoubling our commitment. Over this last decade, we've spent $4.5 billion on vaccine research and delivery. And today we're announcing a commitment over this next decade, which we think of as a decade of vaccines having incredible impact. We're announcing that we'll spend over $10 billion on vaccines. That will help invent new vaccines. That will help get some new vaccines out that will in help increase the coverage.
So there's important foundation believes the donation could save up to 7.6 million children through to 2019.
Paxil is just one of the drugs at the heart of this case. An antidepressant, the drug company GlaxoSmithKline promoted it as a treatment for depression in children, even though it was never cleared for use by anyone under the age of 18. This is called off-label marketing, and it's illegal. For this and other breaches, GSK has been fined $3 billion.
Today's multi-billion-dollar settlement is unprecedented in both scope and size. It underscores this administration's firm commitment to protecting the American people and holding accountable those who commit healthcare fraud.
The company also took the drug Wellbutrin, another antidepressant, and pitched it as a weight loss product. It made unsupported claims about the safety of a diabetes drug.
Anywhere between 50 and 100,000 diabetics had unnecessary, unneeded heart attacks or death due to the drug Avandia. This drug hurt a lot of people.
GSK wanted doctors to prescribe its products and to convince their colleagues to do the same. That can create $1 billion drugs, and so it bribed some doctors with exotic trips, money-making speeches, and even Madonna concert tickets.
GlaxoSmithKline was booking billions of dollars a year on the sales of these drugs, and they were doing it for a decade. They knew from their own compliance program that they were doing wrong more than 10 years ago. But they made the calculation and did the calculated risk and said, we'll go with it. We'll continue to do the fraud because at the end, though they'll nick us, we'll pay less money than if we gave up doing the business of fraud. Fraud was profitable, so they got more of it.
GSK is one of the world's largest healthcare companies, but it's not the first to be found guilty of violations like this. The firm says mistakes were made and it has learned. Its operating procedures will also be monitored by government officials for the next 5 years.
Women stepping out of the shadows, revealing how far they'll go to have it all. Mothers and wives juggling all the demands of work and home with a pill that's being called Mother's New Little Helper. It has been exploding in popularity among women in their 20s and 30s. In just 8 years, the number of prescriptions is up 750%. But as ABC's Dan Harris reports, using that pill may carry a high price.
They are moms in the shadows all over America, drowning in their daily responsibility.
I'm a single mom of 3. Very active in my community, juggle workload and children.
We received a wave of anonymous voicemails and emails from a hidden underworld of mothers who have found what they say is a secret way to do it all.
With the help of Adderall, Mom, you take Adderall.
And I do in fact take Adderall. Adderall. And these women don't have ADHD. They say they need Adderall simply to be better mothers. We persuaded one of these moms to step out of the shadows. Her name, Betsy DeGree from suburban Minneapolis.
I grew up in a house where my mom was very neat and everything was really clean and beautiful dinners every night, and that didn't come naturally for me.
Several years ago, one of Betsy's children was prescribed Adderall for ADHD. In a moment of desperation, she stole a pill from her own child, and she says it worked.
I was able to get all the stuff done around the house. I was able to, cook the dinner and have everything perfect.
Did it make you feel like Supermom?
It did.
You said that you would go from 8 undoable loads of laundry to
getting it out, staying up till 3 a.m. and getting it all done.
She says she thought she'd only take it once.
I couldn't stop. I could not stop taking them. I would just be like, okay, I'm just going to do it one more time.
When she ran out, she had to trick the family doctor into writing more prescriptions.
I would call and say we lost them. I would call and say that dose isn't right.
You were trying every trick in the book.
Every trick in the book.
This need for trickery has given rise to a whole online ecosystem. Check this out. If you go to Yahoo and type in the words, "How do I get my doctor to prescribe Adderall?" you will literally get tens of millions of results. Joni Gamble, a registered nurse, started taking Adderall after finding a book that told her how to lie to her doctor to get the drug.
Your life becomes a squirrel just looking for that nut, looking for that Adderall.
Addiction doctors tell us this situation is getting out of control.
We're seeing an increase in use of Adderall and other amphetamines by women, a really powerful stimulant that can cause seizures, strokes, heart attacks, even death.
One day, Joni, who remember is a nurse, took 10 Adderall pills and nearly died of an overdose.
I knew I was probably having a heart attack on Adderall.
And when Betsy, who admits she's struggled with addiction issues all of her life, decided she could no longer fool her doctor, well, listen to what she did next.
I just switched to meth.
You switched to meth?
I did.
She lost her business, and she says she nearly lost her children. Both women are now clean, and they have this advice for any mom considering taking Adderall.
Don't. That can happen to anybody, I guess.
For more news, visit pigminenews.com.
This is Ozzy Skateboard, and you're listening to UCY.tv.